Randy, the National Couture.
I'm Stephan Bonnar.
This is Canada Spider Grove.
I'm Cara Priesing. This is Brandon Truth Vera.
Hey, I'm Ariane Celeste.
Yeah, I'm Chuck the Duck.
I'm Forrest Griffin.
I am Fyodor. You are watching MMA Fix.
Welcome to a special installment of the MMA Fix. This is UFC 94 betting odds. My name is Dave Farra. This is Steve Cofield from Yahoo Sports. Thanks for joining us.
Happy as always.
UFC 94 is a great card. Super Bowl weekend in Las Vegas, already sold out. And what's amazing about this card is that it's sold out far in advance. Most cards don't sell out until the night of. And the depth of the card. Let's start by talking about that.
It's a good card. I mean, the main event obviously is the show stealer with GSP and Penn, and I think it is one of those all-time fights, and the matchup will be interesting when we break it down. But Jon Fitch is on this card. The guy just challenged St-Pierre before this fight for the welterweight title.
Well, and he didn't just challenge St-Pierre. He put up a great fight against him and had him in trouble almost a couple of times.
He did. He put up a good fight, and he got beat up pretty badly in that fight. But there's no doubt that Jon Fitch can still be considered one of the top 3 or 4 170s. I don't know that anyone else has actually moved ahead of Jon Fitch. Clay Guida is fighting Nate Diaz, which, you know, could be a fight night header. That's a really good card. Carl Parisian is going against another judo expert in Kim, so that's a really good one. We're going to get to Bonnar and Jones and the depth with Machida and Silva. So there's some nice fights on this card and really even matchups and a lot of potential for different fights to wind up as fight of the night.
Let's jump right into the top 3 fights on the card. We'll start with Jon Jones, who's plus 150, versus Stephan Bonnar, minus 180. Do you think that Stephan Bonnar is going to be fully recovered, 100% ready, and come out and beat up Jon Jones?
I would assume. I mean, he's been off 15 months. It was a pretty brutal knee injury. He'll tell you that himself. It was a long rehab. Bonnar has the ability to be an elite fighter. He just has to get into the right camp. I think he's done that, so I think he will be recovered. And the odds kind of surprised me. I know it's been a long layoff, but we don't know a whole lot about Jon Jones. I mean, I saw him in his debut, and he did look impressive. He's a wispy-looking guy at 6'4" and 205 pounds. He doesn't look like he weighs 205, but then when you walk up close to him, he's a big dude. But we don't know how, a whole lot. He looked like he had decent stand-up. It's developing. He's very early on in his career. He's got a wrestling background. I just don't know that he's going to have enough tools in the tool chest that are going to make it really dangerous for Stephan Bonnar. And as we know, Bonnar is a pretty well-rounded guy. Most of Bonnar's problems are killer instinct and going out there and fighting to finish fights instead of fighting at a slow pace.
That's true. Jon Jones has a perfect record. He's 7-0 right now, and a lot of odds makers will look at that and go, oh, he's undefeated. But 7-0 doesn't really mean anything when you're fighting outside of the UFC in some of these smaller shows, even if it is on a professional level. Stephan Bonnar has been around, has trained with, and is now very focused, working with the best trainers in the entire world. And I like how he's breaking up his game a little bit. He'll go train boxing with this guy, he'll go do wrestling with this guy, and jiu-jitsu with a different person. And he's very focused, and he's smart about the way he's training, and I expect that to translate to his fight game. So do I think Stephan Bonnar is the good money at minus 180? I would say yes. Would you concur?
I agree. And you know what? I think by the time fight night comes around with a huge crowd and then public money, no one's going to know who Jon Jones is. So Bonnar right now is 180. At least that's what the thought is before the odds come out. He'll probably, I would think, rise to like 220. So I think the public money will be on Stephan Bonnar.
Moving along, Lyoto Machida minus 300, Thiago Silva plus 220. This is an interesting fight, and I think probably Lyoto Machida's greatest challenge to date. I know that sounds funny because he's fought guys like Tito Ortiz and Sokaju, but would you agree that this is his biggest challenge, possibly that Thiago Silva offers the most stumbling blocks?
I think it's one of his biggest. You know, remember, he fought Rich Franklin and actually knocked Rich Franklin out at 205 pounds. Now, that's not Franklin's weight, but that's a pretty tough test, and that's a guy who's 24-3. If Silva gets the fight to the ground, he can be very dangerous. He doesn't want to stay standing. That's going to be scary. You don't want to stay standing against Machida. But the big thing with Machida is that he's a slow-paced fighter. He's a points fighter. He will wear you down. And if he doesn't wear you down early, then all of a sudden, as a big dog, you have a chance to steal a round here or there. You know, it's only a 3-round fight. So what happens if Silva looks good in the first round? All of a sudden, the pressure is on Machida. Laying minus 300, a little risky.
I think it's very interesting that Lyoto Machida almost got caught in an armbar by Tito Ortiz, who's not a jiu-jitsu guy. Maybe that was a fluke. Maybe that was a one-time thing. I don't think that that Lyoto Machida is a slouch on the grounds by any stretch of the imagination. However, Thiago Silva is a very well-rounded guy. He's got heavy hands.
He's no joke with the jiu-jitsu. I mean, if he gets you on the ground, and he's a very good ground and pound guy, and he's a big dude for the weight. Generally, Machida is a pretty good size 205. This guy walks around. He's a big-sized guy. So size-wise, this is about an even matchup.
If you want to bet the fights, you can go to MMAfix.com. On this particular fight, I'm not going to lay any money because I don't think that it's a huge win-win. But I'm going to say that Lyoto Machida is going to win the fight. I know that you disagree a little bit.
Well, I think value-wise, and we do a lot of this on the betting angle. I think value-wise, Silva's probably the play. It depends on where the price winds up. I don't think there'll be a lot of Silva money that will come in late, but if he stays at 220, I think it's worth the risk.
Lyoto Machida versus Thiago Silva is second on the card, right before George St-Pierre and BJ Penn. And this is one of those fights that's exciting, mostly because BJ Penn is a bit of a showman. You know, he licks the blood of his opponents off his hands after a victory. He's been talking trash to George St-Pierre, saying that they were going to fight to the death, and for some reason I believe him. I'm excited about this one, mostly because these guys have a history. BJ's a very emotional guy, and George is definitely on top of his game right now. Do you think the odds of George St-Pierre at -170 and BJ Penn at +140 are fair odds?
No, I don't. I think they're way too high on George St-Pierre. I'm actually shocked, and I do think the money is going to come in on BJ Penn to move the number down. So if you like BJ Penn, you better grab him early because I think it'll even out as the fight approaches. You know, there's a lot of ways to look at this fight because I have a tough time coming up with the way that GSP is going to win the fight. He's outstanding. I mean, he is one of the top 4 guys in the world. I think BJ Penn actually has the potential to be #1 pound for pound. That's how high I am on him. The one negative is going to be the conditioning because at 170, he's not what he is at 155. I don't know that George St-Pierre can take BJ Penn down. Sean Sherk couldn't. We've seen other elite wrestlers who could not get BJ Penn to the ground. Once he's on the ground, if BJ's on the bottom, I don't know that he's going to get pounded out, and I actually think he's very dangerous on the bottom in terms of submissions. And I will tell you, one of the most underrated things about BJ Penn is his stand-up game. I think he may be the best boxer in all of MMA. Talked to Freddie Roach a few months ago. He said, hey, this guy walked in, little Hawaiian guy, was great. One of the best MMA strikers I've ever worked with. He didn't say that about Anderson Silva, who he's worked with recently. He said it about BJ Penn. And the key is, and they've both gotten better, has George's stand-up gotten better to the point where he can defend himself against BJ Penn? Because I can tell you at UFC 58 when they fought, if BJ hadn't gassed, he was real close to winning that first round 10-8. He destroyed George St-Pierre like no one else has. He really peppered him. He got tired as the fight went along. The fight was decided in the final minute by a takedown. Conditioning could be the key in the end, but I think across the board, I actually think BJ, outside of size, is better than George in every area.
I think George has the potential to ground and pound BJ Penn. If he catches him with a shot, brings him to the ground, George St-Pierre has a tremendous amount of strength in his lower body. He's not a huge guy in his upper body, but in his lower body, he's very strong. And we saw him utilize that very effectively, very wisely against Matt Hughes. I think that potentially, if he catches BJ Penn, that's where he could win this fight.
If he can get top control and keep BJ Penn on the ground and try to pound him out, he has a shot to win the fight, and that's where he's going to win the fight. See, this is another one of those fights. Are you going to be a tough guy, or are you going to fight the smart fight? And we see this all the time. I don't think George St-Pierre's best plan is to stand, but I think he may stand. And I think that's part of the whole process of BJ Penn coming out in the last couple of weeks saying, we're going to fight to the death. I am going to kill you. To kind of psych out GSP to go, you know what, we don't want to go to the ground. And he already said it after the last fight. He said the last time you won, this is not the Ultimate Takedown Championship. It's the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So it's all part of the mind games. And I do think George, there's still a small part of George St-Pierre against the most elite opponent where you can get into his head.
All right, your official pick, sir.
I'm going to go with BJ Penn. I love the value here. I think there's tremendous upside for BJ Penn. I think he knows now he can vault himself to another level, and I think he's got it just about every area over GSP. He's focused. I think he's playing the right mind game, so I'll take the plus money.
I'm going to go ahead and disagree and say that George St-Pierre is my pick. At -170, I wouldn't bet it at that point. I would wait till it evens out a little bit more because, as Steve said, I think it's going to even out as we get a little bit closer to the fight. Once again, if you want to bet on the fights, MMAfix.com is a great place to do it. Steve Cofield from Yahoo Sports. I'm Dave Farra. Thanks for watching this special edition of the MMA Fix.